The striker walks slowly toward the goalkeeper. He's not sprinting, not making a run, just standing there, waiting. The ball is still on the other side of the field. His teammates pass it around, buying time. The defenders don't know what to do. Follow him and leave space behind. Stay back and give away half the pitch. Then the pass comes. Long, high, perfect. The crowd rises. The assistant referee keeps the flag down. Because in this world, offside never existed, and the game you think you know is about to look completely different. Would football become more exciting than ever before? Or would it quietly destroy everything that made it great? Most people answer that question instantly. More goals, more chances, more excitement, and honestly, that's not a crazy thought. Football without offside sounds like football with the handbrake removed. But here's what nobody tells you about removing one rule from a sport built around it for over a century. The consequences don't stop where you expect them to. They keep going. They reach places that have nothing to do with offside at all. So before we go any further, understand one thing. The offside rule was never really about stopping unfair goals. It was about forcing football to be clever. And when it disappears, so does the cleverness. Let's start with the obvious. Yes, there would be more goals. Think about Kylian Mbappé, one of the fastest players on the planet. Right now, he has to time his runs carefully, stay level with the last defender, wait for exactly the right moment before he sprints. Without offside, he doesn't wait. He stands near the goalkeeper from the very beginning and stays there the entire match. Every long ball becomes a foot race. He almost always wins. Every misplaced pass, every moment of hesitation from the opposition becomes a chance. The long ball over the top, which modern teams use sparingly, could become the dominant attacking strategy almost overnight. Score lines of 5 or 6 goals per game might become far more common, and for a moment that sounds like exactly what football needed. But a quieter question appears almost immediately. If scoring is easy, is it still exciting? Think about why goals feel the way they do right now. A goal in modern football is a breakdown. Something that held for 87 minutes finally collapsed. A pass that was simply too perfect to stop. Goals feel rare enough to matter. When your team scores, you feel something physical. Your heart actually jumps. Now imagine that happening every few minutes. Would each one still feel that way, or would they slowly become ordinary? Because when everything becomes extraordinary, nothing feels extraordinary anymore. This is the first thing most people miss. More goals doesn't automatically mean more meaning. But here's where the real question begins. If goals become easier to score, who actually benefits? And who gets left behind? Think about the players this sport has celebrated most. Not always the fastest, not always the strongest. The ones who seem to see the game differently, who arrived in spaces the defense hadn't noticed yet, who timed their runs so perfectly that they appeared unmarked as if by magic. Players like Lionel Messi. His pace was never his greatest gift. His greatest gift was reading space, arriving where nobody else thought to look, turning small pockets of freedom into something extraordinary. But that art requires offside. It requires a defensive line to beat, a trap to time perfectly, a moment where intelligence wins against athleticism. Without offside, that space simply doesn't exist in the same way. Defenders sit deep from the beginning, already waiting, already covering, and so this question becomes unavoidable. Would Lionel Messi, in this version of football, still become Lionel Messi? Now think about Cristiano Ronaldo, a different kind of player entirely, built on athletic perfection, speed, power, and an ability to impose himself physically on any situation. In a world without offside, Ronaldo's gifts might become even more devastating. The pace, the physicality, the ability to simply outrun and outmuscle the opposition. Two of the greatest players in history, one rule removed, and suddenly their destinies might have gone in completely opposite directions. This is what makes the offside question so much bigger than tactics. It doesn't just change how teams play, it changes which human beings get to become legends. In a world where pace dominates, defense changes completely. Right now, defenders play as a unit. They move together, push up together, drop together. The defensive line functions like one organism, and it works entirely because of offside. Without it, defenders can no longer push forward as a group. The moment they do, they leave space any attacker can legally occupy, so they do the only thing that makes sense. They stay back, deep, much deeper than anything you see in modern football. The shape collapses toward the goalkeeper. The middle of the pitch becomes enormous, open, abandoned. The high defensive line, at one of the most important ideas in modern coaching, becomes impossible. Pressing, that high-energy tactic of winning the ball back immediately, becomes a dangerous gamble. Defending stops being an art of positioning and becomes a test of pure endurance. And the clubs with the deepest squads, the most money, the fastest players pull even further ahead of everyone else. Which brings us to a story that almost breaks your heart to think about. Think about Leicester City in 2016, a club from a modest English city with a budget so small compared to their rivals that some people didn't even take them seriously, did something the sport had almost never seen, against odds so extreme that some bookmakers paid out early because they genuinely believed it was impossible. Leicester City won the Premier League. They did it through discipline, through a defensive organization so precise and so well drilled that individually superior opponents couldn't break it, through a tactical structure that turned their limitations into strengths. Their defensive shape was their equalizer. Without offside, that equalizer disappears. The clubs with the fastest, most physically dominant players win, not because of smarter coaching, simply because they have more pace and more power. The miracle becomes less possible, and the sport that was once celebrated for its beautiful unpredictability begins to feel a little more predetermined. Now here's the question that takes everything further, not just would football be worse, but would football even become the world's game? Think about why football conquered every continent, every culture, every economic background. It wasn't just the goals, it was the tension between them. 90 minutes of rising and falling pressure. Moments where nothing happens and everything is about to happen. The feeling of a match balanced on a single decision, a single pass, a single run timed to perfection. That tension exists because scoring is hard, because defenses can organize, compress space, set traps, and hold. Because one moment of brilliance breaking through all of that feels like a small miracle. In a world without offside, much of that tension could dissolve. Scoring is not a breakthrough, it is simply an outcome. Would a sport like that have captured the imagination of billions? Would the game have spread the way it did into villages and cities across every corner of the planet, played on streets and dirt fields by children who had nothing except a ball and the dream of doing something extraordinary? Or would it have stayed a simpler, louder, less hypnotic version of itself? A sport people watched, but never fell completely in love with. Somewhere, that striker is still standing beside the goalkeeper, still waiting. The pass comes, he scores, the crowd reacts, but not the way you remember. Because when everything becomes extraordinary, nothing feels extraordinary anymore. Goals aren't miracles, they're routine. And the teammate who played that long ball didn't read the game. He didn't see a gap opening between two defenders. He didn't solve anything. He just kicked it forward and hoped. The hardest questions football once asked had become much simpler. Maybe that's what the offside rule was protecting all along. Not tradition, not fairness, not even the score, but the feeling that when a goal finally comes, after all that tension and all that work and all those near misses, it actually meant something. One rule, invisible to most people most of the time, quietly holding the whole thing together.